when they say that they're thinking about starting a direct care practice, there are a few questions that keep coming up again and again. They seem to be universal. So I'm going to talk today about 10 of the most common fears that I hear from physicians when they start thinking about opening a direct primary care practice.
Welcome to DPC Life, the podcast where independent doctors share real stories, bold ideas, and the freedom of doing medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Ann Gonzalez, and together we'll explore the wins, the struggles, and everything in between. Let's dive in.
Usually it's me and someone else talking, and this time it's just me. So the last time I did a bonus episode, I was talking about our DPC Women Connect event. And one thing that I've been working on since then is the independent practice path. I started this program because when I talk with people who are thinking about starting a direct care practice, a lot of times they think about it and then they continue thinking about it. They don't really get any forward progress. And sometimes it stays for a while, like months or even years. It took me personally about 8 years from the time I heard about DPC to actually when we opened. Now, when I first heard about DPC, it was very new. We had hardly any resources at the time, I think, to help people with getting them started. And at the time, when I heard about DPC, I just kind of thought, oh, that's wonderful. I would love to do that, but it's not for me because I didn't think I could do it, number one. And so it just kind of went in the back of my head. So what I'm trying to do is help people not take years before they open their DPC practice. Because right now we know that the healthcare system is really in a difficult situation. It's quite difficult, particularly for primary care, obviously. The doctors are having to see too many people in too little time. That's not what they thought they would be doing when they went into medical school. So I want to help people get out of fee-for-service medicine so that they can open their own direct primary care practice and practice medicine the way they thought they would when they went into medical school. The kind of practice when, they wrote their personal statement about why they wanted to do medicine and how they wanted to. What I've heard from people when they say they're thinking about starting a direct care practice, there are a few questions that keep coming up again and again. They seem to be universal. So I'm going to talk today about 10 of the most common fears that I hear from physicians when they start thinking about opening a direct primary care practice. And I'm just going to read some of these off because I can't remember all of them. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, so forgive me for reading some off my paper here. So number one, will patients actually follow me? And this is something that pretty much everyone thinks. Are they going to follow me after I leave my employed practice? And generally, what seems to be pretty consistent is if you're coming from an employed practice and opening a DPC practice, anywhere from about 5 to 10% of your previous patients follow you. You're a good doctor, you're a good physician, and people will follow you when they see the value and they're attached to you. So, you're not going to get 100%, obviously, but you're not going to get no one. I know that's a double negative, which means it's positive. You're going to get some people. Now, some people are a little less and some people are more, but that's what it kind of generally seems to come out to. About 5 to 10% of your previous patients will follow you into your new direct primary care practice. Number two, how do I explain the membership fee? So this is kind of a hard point for physicians just because we've never had to explain the fees for our services before because it's always been billed through the office and someone else is taking care of that. And we don't have to deal with the money because it makes us uncomfortable saying this is how much this costs. I mean, I didn't know how much like a vitamin D lab was. And when people would come in and say it was $200, for example, I was shocked. I had no idea that that's how much it was. So that's only one thing that you have to explain. Now, how do you explain the membership fee? Well, that's completely different because how do you explain it to people who already have insurance and explain that they're going to have to pay more? That's something that you learn and you get used to it, but definitely it's something that you'll have to practice. The third question is, when should I start telling people that I'm leaving? Well, this is also, it's very dependent on your situation, on your contract. Do you have a non-solicit clause? And so it depends on your contract. If you don't have a non-solicit clause, if you can, I would start telling them as soon as possible so that they can start learning about DPC and getting the idea into their heads so that if they do decide they want to follow you, they understand what they're getting into. So it depends. So if you have a non-compete / non-solicit, that makes it a little harder, but there are ways to kind of not necessarily get around it, but sort of get around it. The next common question is, what if I leave my job too early and I don't have the patience yet to support me or my family financially? Obviously, you'll have to look at your finances prior to opening your practice and take a good hard look and be very realistic about how much, how long, kind of how much runway do you have before you need to earn a certain amount. And some people have side gigs while they're opening their practice, which can be good or bad. Obviously, it's good to keep you flush, but also it will take away time from growing your new practice. So pros and cons to that. You have to figure out how much you're going to need to make and then work backwards to try and figure out how much are you going to charge people for their monthly membership. Another question is, what if I wait too long before talking to people about DPC? I do think you can't start too early if you're allowed to talk to your patients about it, if you don't have a non-solicit clause. Also, even if you do have a non-solicit clause, you can start talking about direct primary care. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go into direct primary care, but if you want to, and if there isn't anything against in your contract saying that you can't post on social media about certain topics, then there's no reason you can't start talking about direct primary care. I would see that as kind of a signal to people that you might be opening a direct primary care practice. Another question, what do I actually do first when I'm opening a practice? So there's a lot of checklists and information online about what do you do? Like, do you get your PLLC first? You need to get a bank account, your register with your state, the medical board in your state. So what do you do first? Another thing that stumps people is, how do I talk about direct primary care without sounding awkward or unsure of things? Again, this is another kind of go along with one of the earlier fears about how do I talk to people about it? How do I explain the membership fee? A lot of physicians say that they feel the meet and greets are uncomfortable, and it may be just because they're still uncomfortable with explaining direct primary care. And the only way to get over that or to get past that is to just practice it and work through your elevator pitch and repeat it over and over and over to the point where it just kind of rolls off your tongue and like it's nothing for you to say it. So you just have to get to that point where you're just comfortable with saying it. You figured out exactly kind of your normal spiel, what you want to say, and just get used to it and say it enough times that it just comes out of your mouth without you having to think too much about it. And that way, by that point, it's going to sound natural and not forced or awkward. Another question or another fear that doctors have before opening their direct primary care practice is, how do I start building interest before I open? This one is extremely important, obviously, because everyone wants to have people either interested or on a wait list of some sort before they open. And you also want to have people enrolled or pre-enrolled already, if possible, before you open your doors. That would give you a whole lot of cushion to have some people. That would feel much safer, more stable, obviously, if you had patients enrolled before you even open your doors. Some people think that you start marketing after you open, but really the key is marketing months ahead of when you open. So starting to talk to your friends, your family, people like employers in your town, the Chamber of Commerce, other groups like BNI. That's when you want to start talking to them even before you open, because you want to educate as many people as possible about direct primary care so that when you're ready to open, they are educated and ready to sign up. Another fear that physicians have is, how do I know if I'm ready to leave employed medicine? That's a really hard one. Again, a very individualized decision. You have to look at a lot of things. Obviously, it has to work out for you and your partner and your family. If you're caring for other family members, them too. So is it going to work out for your family? What kind of stressors does that put on your family, on your relationship, if you are going to be building this practice? What stressors does it put on your finances? Again, you have to look at your finances and be very honest. You don't want to go into this without having a clear view of potentially what will happen to your income and how much do you need to make. It's a little bit different if you own your business because of the way taxes work. You don't have to earn exactly the number that you used to make in your employed practice as your salary. So the numbers are a little bit different, but still you'll want to talk to someone, an accountant, before you open. But beyond your family situation, your finances, you'll know if you're ready, depending also on your mindset, how you're feeling at work. Are you feeling burned out? Do you feel like it's sustainable? How would you feel if you stayed in your current situation for 6 more months, another 1 to 2 years? What do you think you'd feel like in 2 years if you stayed where you are? Would you feel the same, just even more burned out? Would you feel happy about it? So these are things that you have to think about when you're trying to figure out when you're ready to leave employed medicine. And lastly, a lot of physicians, when they're thinking about opening a direct primary care practice, will wonder if they're the only person who's thinking about it. A lot of times they feel alone. They feel like it's really risky and unusual for people to do this. Now, granted, there are not that many direct primary care practices in the country, but every month there are more and more people opening direct primary care practices. So you are not alone. You are not the only one. There's a whole community of people who've already opened their direct primary care practices and are in the process of opening their practices. So this is not unusual. And as you can see by the number of practices that have opened and survived and thrived, that this isn't necessarily risky. What's risky is opening without a plan. But it is possible to open a practice and do very well, to open a practice and be successful and thrive. So it's not unusual for that to happen. So you may notice that none of these questions are about how you care for patients within a direct primary care practice. They are more about communication, about timing, and about confidence in opening. When a physician doesn't have a clear path forward, then the default is to just stay in that considering and thinking stage, researching stage for a long time. What I've seen is physicians that move forward and open practices, they've done a few things that have helped them move forward with momentum. They don't just launch and then start looking for patients. Instead, their momentum begins building earlier, sometimes months earlier. The moment that a physician starts talking about their future practice, some important things can start happening right then. And that leads us to the framework that I've come up with called the practice momentum flywheel. So a flywheel is really a cycle that it builds momentum over time. And in an independent practice, the cycle looks something like this. You need to reach people. Then your message needs to resonate with them. Next, you respond to their questions. And over time, people join your practice, they stay, and then refer others. When they refer others, that is also part of your reach. And so it is a cycle. Reach, resonate, respond, and retain. And gradually, you gain momentum. Many doctors already know that they want something different. They realize that what they're doing is not sustainable. What they don't need is more information. What they need is a clear path forward. And that's why I created the Independent Practice Path. It's a small physician cohort designed to help doctors move from thinking about direct care to actually preparing to open. Over 8 weeks, we focus on the decisions that actually move things forward. Clarifying your practice model, learning how to talk about direct primary care, beginning to build interest, and putting the basic systems in place that support your practice. If you've been thinking about starting an independent practice, but feel unsure about the next step, you are not alone. Many physicians are asking the same exact questions. If you'd like to explore whether this path might be right for you, you can start with the DPC Readiness Reflection on the Harmony Ops website. It's a short exercise designed to help you think through where you are in the process. You can also find the link in the caption. And if you have questions, just email me. You can find my email on the readiness reflection page as well. The next cohort of the independent practice path is starting on March 24th. And you'll be able to register until March 21st. There's only a limited time to sign up because people stay in the thinking about DPC stage for so long. And by having a hard start date, that is going to shift you into an action mode. I don't want people to be thinking about this too long and then forgetting about it or pushing it off. So if you're interested in joining us, the cohort will start in a couple of weeks, and I can't wait to meet you and help you get started on your DPC journey. Thank you for listening to the DPC Life podcast. And as always, remember that no matter where you are in your DPC journey, your DPC family's got your back. See you next week on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to DPC Life. If today's conversation inspired you, hit follow, leave a review, and share it with a friend who's ready for change. Remember, wherever you are in the journey, your DPC family has your back. Until next time, keep building a practice and a life that truly fits you.